Welcome to the Pop Docs channel. My name is Joseph, one half of the Pop Docs, joined by the other half of the Pop Docs, my sister Denny. Denny, how are you doing today?
Hello. I'm doing pretty good. Doing pretty good.
Excellent, excellent. So,
How are you?
I am very well. For many reasons, one of which is we're back talking Wheel of Time. And any time, any day we get to talk about Wheel of Time in any of its versions, formats, mediums, is a good day. No matter what I think about the particular piece of Wheel of Time that we're talking about today. But today we're talking about in this video the third episode of Season 2, which is titled What Might Be. For those new to the channel, we talk all different types of pop culture, but one of the things we love talking about, and we've talked about in our podcast episodes and other videos on the channel, is the Wheel of Time, both in its book format as well as its television format. In fact, we have 2 videos posted to our YouTube channel where we react, review, discuss, rate the first 2 episodes of Season 2, which you can find, as I mentioned, on our YouTube channel. And we're planning to do the same for the remainder of this season, the last 5 episodes of Season 2. But today we're talking episode 3, What Might Be. And so we are going to be talking spoilers for season 1 of the Wheel of Time series. Obviously the previous 2 episodes, first 2 episodes of this season. And we will be able to, we have license to talk about the first 3 books of the series, as those are the books that are largely being adapted as we understand it into season 2. And anything I've forgotten from the preamble before we leap into talking about this episode that you can think of?
I don't think so. Spoilers for all of the above. Let's dive into it.
Let's dive into it. I'm going to start with Rand this time. I want to save Nynaeve and her storyline for the last part of the video, because off camera, when we were just chatting about this episode and then reacting to it and how we would structure this video, I think we have interesting thoughts on that storyline. So I want to, and that was largely the main storyline. I think that was like basically the A storyline in this episode. So we'll leave that to the end. So we'll talk about Rand, and he's trapped in a video game. He's set on a fetch quest by Logain. But as we learned at the end of episode 2, which we both like the ending, and the reveal that he's there at the sanatorium, he's working there, and he's been trying to move up the ranks of the sanatorium in order to be promoted to a position where he gets to wait on the VIPs. And one of the VIPs there is Logain. That's where he's been sent after being gentled. And so this episode contains that promo clip that we saw with Logain that you and I chatted about when it came out. We both loved it. We both love this actor. I would submit, as others have, this is a different Logain than we get in the books, certainly the early books, because this is a Logain that's still fairly in control of his capacities, if you will, to manipulate people, converse with people, as he does in many respects with Rand in this episode. And as we find out, he's also still convinced that he's Lews Therin. He still believes he's the dragon, despite having been gentled. And so I did not get the feeling of the depressed Logain that we get in the first several books, as he's just wandering around the White Tower being escorted by novices and accepted and the like. This is seemingly, he doesn't even seem to be supervised in any way by someone that can wield the One Power. And so that is essentially the gist of Rand's storyline, is he wants to get trained by, receive advice from Logain, and Logain tells him he knows exactly who he is, other than he's a Dragonborn. He knows he's a male channeler. And he flashes back to season 1 when he's being paraded through Tar Valon. He claims he saw Rand, and Rand was glowing. He had this glow, this aura that identified him as a male channeler. And Logain has seen other channelers, other auras like this. And so this was where I, in a previous video when we were talking about the scene, had a little bit of an annoyance because it feels like a retcon, because I don't think he was actually laughing the way it was depicted in the first season. But in this conversation, Logain says, I was just laughing maniacally because I knew you'd shake the world to its foundations and potentially destroy it. And I found that comical. But anyway, in order to access Logain's fountain of wisdom, he requires Rand to go and get a Galdean wine, a vintage from Galden, I think is how it's pronounced. I could be mispronouncing it. God knows I've mispronounced a lot of things as it relates to the wheel time.
We both do.
Yeah, and so Rand essentially turns to Selene for assistance because she's an innkeeper. Presumably, she sells alcohol at her inn, so she has some working knowledge of vintages. Is that how would you call it? Wine vintage? Would you call it vintage?
Yeah, vintages. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm obviously not a sommelier. Stretch the imagination. And so what she does is she takes him shopping, gets him a really nice red coat, which is a nice Easter egg because I believe it's supposed to reflect the coat that he's wearing on the cover of the last book of the series. It's not a real spoiler or anything like that. So it's a nice callback, nice Easter egg for book fans.
It's a cool detail.
Yeah, and they go to a party. They're rubbing shoulders with the upper echelon of Carianan society. Mm-hmm. And we get a lot of some additional Easter eggs, some other nods. We have Rand being given an invitation to a subsequent party that he then throws into a fire that's burning in a trash can next to him. He is then almost accosted, in a sense, verbally accosted by some member of the upper class. And she's telling him, you gotta look out. None of these people are really your friends. They're all trying to get an angle on you. And of course, she is as well.
So what's your angle?
Exactly. Yeah. This woman is just crapping on everybody else at the party, but obviously she has her own angle. She's trying to manipulate him as well and find out who he is. Mm-hmm. And then Selene eventually wanders back up to him because she accompanies him to this party, and she's looking good. They're both looking good. They're like a power couple in this scene, and everyone else kind of looks old and codgy and dusty, except for them. And he, though, is kind of unnerved by all this interaction with this upper echelon person, this elite. Mm-hmm. And so he takes the wine. Selene had secured the wine that he needed. He just takes it and leaves. And delivers it to Logain, and then demands that Logain fulfill his end of the bargain. And so essentially Logain just uses the wine as a metaphor for being unable to actually hold back Saidin. Because Rand, I guess, is essentially trying to figure out how not to access it so that he doesn't go mad. Right. And Logain just says, that's not possible. Sorry. This is your fate, and you have to accept it. And so he actually Logain does not drink a single drop of the wine. In fact, he throws it against the wall, and that's when he becomes enraged. And
he smelled it.
Okay. He was halfway there. Maybe that's all he wanted. Maybe he had a smell sense of his home. And he just wanted to smell Galden. I keep saying Galden. He wanted to smell it again. And so then Rand basically says, this was a stupid idea. You're mad. I can't get anything out of you. I'm just going to leave. And so he leaves. He then has a dream where he is confronted by Selene, who is very upset that she was ditched by him at the party.
She was pissed.
But they still begin to sleep with each other. They initiate coitus, if you will. But it seemingly turns out that they're in a dream. And Rand is channeling in the dream. He then wakes up by himself in bed, channeling, and he lights the roof of the inn on fire. And Selene comes and screams for him to get out of the building, and they do. And that is the end of his storyline for the moment. Mm-hmm. So, your thoughts?
It reminded me of like meeting an NPC and getting a side quest. And Rand has to go find the wine, and he recruits help to go and find this wine. And then
you got to go question other NPCs about where you can find the wine, and then they tell you where to go next, to go point B, and which is the shop to get the coat, to then get the invitation to go.
Exactly. He gets the invitation, he goes to the party, he finds the wine, and then he goes back, he delivers it, and then he gets this reward that's just not like nothing. And then you're like, damn it! I went through all that just to get this.
Yeah, and it was, at least at the moment, it was meaningless, because he didn't actually get any advice, any direction, any teaching from Logain. He just said, this was a mistake, I'm out. I'm going to find a different career path.
Right. I think... I mean, the general gist of how these 3 episodes led up to this moment with Rand's storyline, I think, unless they pay it off in, like, the next one, or, ones after, of why he went through all this trouble with Logain and just got told nothing. Hopefully there's more to it. that we just haven't been revealed yet. But I mean, it just kind of seems like a letdown of like, he went through all this trouble and we sat through this whole thing to get this wine, and then Logain told, which turned out to be pretty obvious. We kind of all expected that, I think, of that, there's nothing you can do. And there wasn't even like a very interesting moment other than Logain still thinking that he's Lutheran and kind of having that rage quit ending with him. But, so I mean, the storyline is not doing any favors for what we discussed in our last video about Rand's storyline not really seeming to go anywhere at the moment. So hopefully it picks up. But, I mean, there were a few little highlights in that. One, we got to see more of Selene, who happens to be one of my favorite characters. And hopefully in this next episode it evolves into more.
Judging by the title name, presumably it will. Or at least
I hope so.
They will delve into it. I assume this is going to be the end of this current interaction between them in the next episode. That's my speculation. That's my main prediction, is that they're going to have a falling out of some sort. Or Moraine is going to show up and in some way remove him from Carian, remove him from the situation.
Yeah.
I don't know, obviously, but that's my prediction, is that we're going to kind of see the fruition of this storyline for the season.
Yeah. So I like that we got to see like a little bit more of Selene and their interactions. I mean, like we discussed, love Logain and the actor who plays him. He's great on screen, and it's so, interesting to watch him on screen. But unfortunately, the storyline just kind of felt dragged out and long for what you ended up getting, which is a disappointment.
Yeah. So, good stuff I liked. I kind of referred to them kind of in the recitation of this storyline. I loved all the Easter eggs. Rand looks great in that coat. He looks like he belongs among the elite. Coat. And so, I mean, he can... I love this actor. We keep praising the acting, but, it's deserving.
I mean, it's the highlight so far of the show.
He's got good range, I think. I mean, I thought it was believable as Shepherd Rand. He's not fully Dragon Reborn Rand yet in terms of being the ruler of nations, the leader of armies and stuff like that. But we see, I think, hints of him at the party, and I think he can pull it off. So I'm excited to see the range. Really like the range, like the actor there. Love Selene. Again, I think the way they're writing her and this actor is pulling off Selene. I mean, that presumably dream episode when she confronts him after the party felt so Selene to me from the books. Yeah. This kind of jilted lover persona.
It gets super pissy.
Plus, if it is a dream, it does factor into the fact of what Selene can do in the books.
Kind of dream walk.
And I think I think they're really doing her character well, despite the significant changes in how they meet and what their actual relationship is in The Great Hunt. Loved the reference to Dias Damar, the Game of Houses.
Game of Houses.
That was great. So I loved that. Love Logain in the sense of the acting. It still is not really Logain, but we'll see where they take him, and that's kind of where it ends for me, because I am really not liking what they're doing so far with Rand, because it feels superfluous to the whole story so far. And yes, it's only 3 episodes, but it's 3 hours into an 8-hour film.
Quite a bit.
And he is, if not the main character, he's supposed to be one of the main characters. He is the Dragon Reborn, despite them still trying to have Logain think he's the Dragon Reborn. And I don't think that they're intending to create suspicion that maybe Rand's also mad. I don't think that's the case. I think it's just Logain's mad. And so Rand so far has felt very irrelevant to the plot. And maybe that will change. I mean, hopefully it does change, but it does strengthen my concern that I mentioned in the last couple of videos as we talked about this season, is they either don't know what to do with Rand or they don't care as much about Rand and his storyline. And so he's not given a whole lot to do. And he still doesn't feel to me like the Dragon Reborn, whether proto-Dragon Reborn from the books or even kind of the actualized Dragon Reborn. So, I was quite disappointed ultimately with this storyline just because it didn't go anywhere. But I have hope for the next episode for the reasons we've alluded to. going forward here. And so I think ultimately, also for me, it has nowhere to go but up, in my estimation.
You can only go up from here.
Yeah.
Which is true.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I struggle because in the universe, I understand his motivation because I believe he doesn't know that he didn't stop the Dark One. I assume he's still under the misapprehension that he did kill the Dark One or banish the Dark One or whatever. Right. And so for him now, it's not about trying to compete against other Forsaken or the forces of the Dark One. Yeah. Now it's just about trying to not go mad and kill people. So in the universe, I kind of understand where he's at and what he's trying to do, but it still feels like in the grand scheme of things, he's spinning his storyline wheels and he's not really going anywhere at the moment. So yeah. Any other thoughts on the Rand storyline?
No, I'm still maintaining my cautiously optimistic vibe that I got going. I feel like, because I mentioned this in the last video we did, is that from the snippets that we've seen that they've released of what's in future episodes of Rand, I'm hopeful that, somehow he just, I don't know, takes a whole 180 or something and starts to embrace his... power and Dragon Reborn badassness, and just you start to see it come through a little bit stronger, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose in the Great Hunt he's not full Dragon Reborn, even though he does have ultimately the duel with Ashamael, the second duel with Ashamael in the books. So in that sense, I kind of get where they're coming from. I see the inspiration, the influence, but I still just feel like it's not going anywhere at the moment. And that this is just something for him to do because they have to have him in the first couple episodes. Right. But everybody else's storylines seem to be moving somewhere. Whether they're moving in a direction we like or not remains to be seen. But hopefully that's a good segue to a storyline that I think is moving in a certain direction, is moving along, is Perrin's. So last we saw, Perrin and the other Shannarans were blown backwards into a bunch of rubble by Damane, after having fought this Shanchan excursion force, or expeditionary force. And it's daytime now, and the Shanchan soldiers have rounded up everybody in this little village. And here comes Lady Surath, her voice, and Ashamael on this giant palanquin. And then the voice, this is where we get nails. Because she's able to direct all the Shanchan based upon just her 4 nails in different ways. And so one of them was to direct a Damani and a Sildam to go around and identify women and girls in the village that could channel. And so this Damani goes around and is pointing at different women and girls, and the Shanchan soldiers are taking them away. And Uno is watching this. The other Shannarans are also watching this, and Perrin's watching this, and Loyal's watching this. And while this is also going on, there was another nail movement, which triggered the voice to start monologuing and giving this speech, which was very much like the Thanos minion, I forget his name, Ebony Maw, maybe, in Infinity War.
The wizard one, right?
Yeah. The very beginning of Infinity War, when all the Asgards are either dead or bloodied on the ship, and he's talking about what an honor it is to be killed by Thanos. They're part of Thanos' glorious plan to save the universe. And that was what I was thinking of as she was up there talking about who the Shanchan are, and that they're squatting on stolen land, and the Shanchan are back now to take what is theirs. And ultimately it's going to lead up to swear the oaths, and we'll let you stay or we'll let you live, but you have to swear to the Shanchan Empire. And while she's going through this monologue, this is when the Damani is going around pointing out all the women that can channel. But Uno says something to Perrin and Ingtar we got to do something. We got to try and fight back. And I think it's Ingtar says, well, that would be really dumb. We're outnumbered. They have people that can wield the power, and we're unarmed. But then Uno, very slyly, but not that slyly because someone sees him, moves his hand up his left thigh, I think it is, revealing a dagger. And he says, that's not necessarily true, or something to that effect. As if he's going to take this dagger and defeat all these Shanchan soldiers of halberds and pikes and the demone and all this stuff. I thought that was really dumb. I mean, I don't mind like the characterization of like he can't stand for this, but like this really makes him seem really dumb that he's somehow going to fight them all off with just a small dagger. Yeah. And like I said, he doesn't do this very well. He doesn't hide this very well because one of the Shan-Chan soldiers sees him doing something or acting suspicious. And so eventually the speaker gets to the point where who's going to be the first to swear the oaths. And this soldier points at Uno and says, "This man," after taking off her helmet. And so the Shan-Chan love face paint. They love face painting because they all have their face painted in different ways, presumably to signify their different capacities in the Shan-Chan army and society and stuff like that. And so that's when Uno then decides to take out the dagger and try and fight him off. And I think he gets the dagger like into one chest plate and it does nothing. Further confirming how stupid it was to include that line in my view of like, oh, we're not unarmed. But I did like they kind of like push him on the ground and then he gets up and he kind of slaps them both away. I like that move. That was pretty cool. And he struts up to the giant palanquin, which has a spike or a horn at the very foot of it, pointing outward away from the palanquin. And I saw some people referring to this as Chekhov's spike or Chekhov's horn, and which I thought was really clever. I thought it was really funny because that refers to him being unwilling to swear the oaths, using profanity directed toward Lady Suroth, and then having his face forcibly pushed onto this spike, going through his mouth. And it wasn't just the initial, so there's like an initial push from, there are two guards flanking him. One guard pushes him onto it, which presumably would have done the trick. Because, I mean, it went through his mouth and through the back of his throat. But then the other guard kicks him in his back, further forcing him down onto the spike and making the spike protrude even further. Leading to audible gasps and screams from everybody in the crowd watching this, including his compatriots. And then the camera lingers on it from different angles. So it's like there's like an overhead shot, if I remember correctly. Then there was a side profile shot of him and his corpse just impaled on this spike. And this was, I should have mentioned, this was preceded by the whoosh, which was great because it was really quick, like, and that's when they boom, boom, spike, dead. And then I think the voice then says something like, Who will swear? And everybody's like, okay, we're good. Yeah.
They're like, oh,
well,
okay.
We're bowing. We're getting down. We're getting down on a couple knees here, and we'll say the oaths however you want to say them.
Right here.
As many times as you want to say them. Yeah, okay. We good? Okay. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? I'm in. So where's the face paint? I don't know. Give me the insect helmet. Yeah. So that is that sequence. And then we get a later sequence where Perrin is in chains in some wagon that's part of a caravan heading to Falm, and he's confronted by Shamael. And Shamael, in a very creepy manner, gives him some water, and then tells him, you know, I'm very interested in your progress as a wolfy dude, as a werewolf, and you should be careful because the more you become the wolf, the more you become mine. And then all of a sudden you hear wolf cries, howls on outside, and Shamael says, "Oh, they're coming." Not in a I'm concerned as a, but more in a I knew this was happening. This is my plan all along. And so then he basically taunts Perrin one more time, and then just leaves the wagon. Elias shows up, frees Perrin, frees nobody else. There are wolves eating people. Elias is implied to have eaten somebody because there's like some guard who's got his throat ripped out, and Elias has got blood all over his mouth and his chin. And Elias points at a wolf and says, "Follow him. He'll take you to where you need to go." And so Perrin does that. And of course, Elias, I don't think, blinks during this whole time and just still has that 1,000-yard stare that's piercing Perrin's soul.
Maybe he can't blink because of the contacts that have in his eyes, and like the man physically cannot blink with them on.
I'm wondering if for vocalists or actors trying to learn a new accent, they might spend months trying to work on this with a dialect coach. I just wonder for him if they told him, we don't want you to blink because we want you to feel otherworldly. And so then he went and did like a Clockwork Orange kind of process where he just kept his eyes open with some instruments.
Yeah.
And now he can't blink. He's just He's like the actor from Elvis who can't get out of the Elvis accent. He's just even in daily life now. He's always got his eyes wide open, staring at people.
He just has someone come with moisture drops and just drop them in there occasionally.
Moist me.
Moisturize me.
Moisturize my eyes. Rub it in. So that's his storyline. Thoughts? What did you think of it?
That's a jam-packed
beyond your
storyline.
thoughts on Elias here. Elias'
Jam-packed
eyes.
storyline. I mean, you don't really get a lot of Perrin until the end. It's kind of a Sanchan highlight to really show how vicious they are.
Perrin basically just reacts to everything in this episode. He doesn't really do anything other than react to things.
And he doesn't really talk. I don't even think he talks except for at the end with Ishmael, if I remember correctly.
And even that's only a couple lines. Like, who are you? Oh, yeah, because I forgot you had mentioned in a previous video, this is where we saw again the fire eyes.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
and that's
the
like
blink of the... And you're like, ah!
Yeah.
Anyway, it's terrible.
You know who I am. And that's when they popped in his head. Mm-hmm. So, like, oh,
and
no,
it's still, I don't know how, but it looked even cheesier in that moment. I was like, we could have done without that. I don't think it was necessary. I think Perrin could have just remembered. But that's besides that. Going back to the Sanchan. I mean, again, great look at what the Sanchan are and kind of their culture and I mean, they could have toned down the a little bit. It's that was getting a little ridiculous. I was like, come on, man. I know what you're trying to do and that she doesn't need to talk and it's just like maybe there's whatever. But that was a little ridiculous.
Let me ask you a question real quick. So I'm pretty sure you saw this movie. Did you ever see Mystery Men with Ben Stiller? It was obviously a while back now.
Yes, but it was very, very long.
Do you remember who the villain was? Jeffrey Rush played the villain. The villain was named Casanova Frankenstein. Great name.
Casanova Frankenstein? Okay, I'm going to look this up.
And his big weapon was he had on his pinky finger, I think of his right hand, it had this really long nail that he filed to a sharp point. And that was his big attack.
I remember this. Yes. I remember this.
And so that's all I can think about with Surath.
I mean, it's a great depiction because it's in the books, and I'm glad that they did it, and they weren't like, this is ridiculous, we're not going to do this. Because, I think it's a great cultural piece of those people to show. So I think it's interesting, but I thought it was just it was getting a little over.
I think we're going to get more. I bet we get more of that.
Oh, I bet we do.
Before the season's out.
I bet we do.
Gird your loins. Get ready for it. We're going to get more nail play. We're definitely getting nail play.
But the whole time I was like, oh my gosh, they need it. Like once or twice is okay, but it happened way too much, and especially with the noise effects they added to it. I was like, come on, man. Like, come on, man. We're getting a little over the top.
But you were the one that already predicted that Turok is going to impale himself on his own nails.
That's where my mind goes now, since they're playing such a prominent role. Just imagine that happening at some point.
And you know you're going to get a sound effect for that. It's going to be like, whoosh.
Oh, totally. Like, shing. Or we're going to see them, like, gently filing and buffing them at some point.
Oh, my gosh. Can you imagine? They're gonna have They're gonna have one of the. I think they're called Day Caval. The servants. They're with a nail file.
Yes, gently buffing.
Or applying more lacquer. I don't know how often you have to apply lacquer to the things, but.
I imagine fairly often, I would think. But but overall, I loved the chain of events that happened in this storyline because you really got to see them be pretty gruesome and brutal, which was pretty cool. Mm-hmm. I mean, the end with Perrin and being released and Elias and stuff. Okay. Again,
really excited for this. What's gonna happen in the storyline?
Well, I mean, I love Ishmael. I mean, we all talk about how great that actor is.
Oh, he's wonderful. Well, let me ask you then. Let me ask you a question on that because I actually have a question for you that I haven't been able to ask you yet. What is his plan? Do you have any idea what his plan is? He has now allowed one of the three. Well, in the show, it's I guess 5 Ta'veren, 4 or 5 Ta'veren. I can't keep track. But one of the people whose dreams he was haunting in the first season to go free and now become linked up with the person that can teach him how to be a wolfie going forward. So what's going on there?
I mean, and how this show will take it, not really, because who knows?
Did it bother you? Did you even think about that?
In all directions. It didn't really bother me because, I mean, we've seen this before, where like the big bad basically releases, someone who he wants to control in the future.
I guess, but I hate that.
Stronger and stuff like that. So I mean, it's kind of. I wasn't too shocked by it because when you saw Ishmael with the High Lady Saroth, I was like, there's clearly only one reason why he's there. It's because he probably knows Perrin's there and he wants to go observe him, maybe, or something along those lines, and also make sure that he doesn't end up staying in captivity with the High Lady and the Seanchan. I think maybe he wants to release Perrin, get him to be stronger in his wolfie abilities, and then eventually, get him to be on his side in the end.
You don't think that's somewhat of a big risk?
I mean, I think it's always a big risk, but if you're Ishmael, who just got released and stuff, maybe he, I don't know, is waiting to see what will happen more so than just keeping him trapped. And
so I have a lot of thoughts on this.
I don't know.
I have a lot of thoughts because this is all I could think about after this episode because it bugged me so much because it made no sense to me. So I was trying to figure out what's going on here because this is one of a handful of people that presumably pose the greatest threat to the Dark One's success and therefore your success as the chief lieutenant of the Dark One. Sure. And so presumably he's going to be a significant ally for Rand. And so, he's clearly trying to manipulate him to turn to his side, turn to the dark side. Join me together. We can rule the Westlands as mentor and mentee. But that is a huge risk to me because if you fail, and he allies himself, and you've given him the keys to empower himself with his wolfie powers, then now you have an incredibly formidable adversary and opponent. And so all I can think is, okay, because I actually think he was surprised to see Perrin when they rolled up on that town. I mean, pleasantly surprised, because I think he smirks at the end of episode 2 when he looks down and sees Perrin, and I think he kind of smirked a little bit. And he's clearly happy to see him when he's talking with him in the wagon. And I love just his attitude. He is, you're on your way to the harbor, or you're on your way to Falm as an honored guest of Lady Saroth. But between you and me, it's not a coveted invitation. I love his lines and his delivery. But it still bothered me that he didn't kill him because he's in his clutches. And this, I think this is a change from the books. And my recollection from the books was he did want to essentially kill Mat and Perrin, and then he wanted to remove Nynaeve and Egwene from the board by having them captured by the Seanchan and shipped off to Seanchan. And so he was in different ways trying to take away allies from Rand. But the more I thought about this is what I think is happening. I think ultimately that Ishmael is more interested in a philosophical debate with himself and with the Dragon Reborn. And I think this is alluded to by the cold open in the first episode where he's talking with this little girl about good and evil, good people, bad people, monsters, and the like. And I think he's ultimately in this philosophical debate, ultimately with Lews Therin and Lews Therin's different reincarnations about the darkness is going to take over eventually, no matter how many turnings, because it's a wheel. And we keep replaying these things, maybe with different permutations. Ultimately, the odds are that the darkness is going to win. People are going to succumb to the dark. And Lews Therin and his iterations are on the other side of that no, there is goodness in people and the light will win out. And so I think this is this is how I rationalized it, is that he wants to use all of Rand's friends and turn them to the Dark One, and the Dark One as evidence that inevitably people that might have good intentions, might have goodness in their heart, might have light in their heart, will find their way to the shadow. And so he's pushing each of these characters in different ways toward that end result and embracing the dark as a way to win a philosophical debate.
That's really deep. I was like, that's really deep.
You have any merit to that?
I don't think the writers are that deep.
Wow.
in my mind.
Shots fired. But I take that as a backhand, not backhanded compliment, an inadvertent compliment, because I don't know if you were trying to compliment me, but
no, I think that's a great perspective on Ishmael, and I think it would totally make sense, especially in connection to the books and how he's portrayed in that sense. But or at least from what I've read so far. I've only read up to the 4th book. Okay, but I would say
well, you've gotten pretty much all of Ishmael.
I can understand about. I would dilute that theory down to even good can be turned to evil if pushed hard enough. that would be my diluted down kind of approach of that, and say that I don't know if they would go as deep as Ishmael just trying to prove a philosophical
He's
point.
trying to prove a point. He's trying to prove a point.
To a Dark One who gives zero shits probably about that.
I don't think it has anything to do with the Dark One. I think this is a debate that he's had with himself as well as with Luce Theron.
Sure.
I think it's a debate 3,000 years in the making, because I'm pretty sure he was around during the breaking.
He's been working on this debate.
He's been honing his arguments over all these centuries and millennia.
And then one day he's just going to be like, I told you so.
QED, it's proven.
And then just be like, mic drop, and just walk away. That's it.
Yeah.
That would be brilliant.
I'm trying to figure out why, because it makes no sense. I mean, if the goal is to prevail over the dragon and the forces of the light, you kill the forces of the light when you have them in your clutches.
Correct. You are not wrong.
And this wasn't the James Bond trope where he comes up with some really convoluted way to kill James Bond, or in this case, Perrin, and Perrin just gets out of it in some way. I mean, this was just, he let him go. It's kind of the reverse of that trope, that recent trope of like the villain allowing themselves to be imprisoned so that they can achieve some goal, whether that's Loki triggering the Hulk or the Joker getting the money. It's kind of, to me, like the reverse of that. It just seems like short-sighted, and I don't understand why he's doing that. And I try to give credit to the people writing the character that there's some grander plan as to why he would allow this character to escape.
I would like to think that, but just based on how the other storylines are going, I don't know if it's that. I think
time will tell.
He just released him because he wants him to get more powerful and have more opportunities to be like, I didn't kill you that time. In fact, kind of let you go.
You owe me one. You owe me one.
So, and then the next time they encounter each other, maybe he does another thing that kind of brings him into his trust, And then, eventually he just becomes...
It's funny because
Perrin in his mind warring of like, oh, what's good, what's evil? I'm turning into a wolfie. Am I evil? And then he, has that debate in his mind kind of thing.
It's funny because I've heard other people in talking about this episode talk about how, this makes sense because he's trying to convince Perrin that being a wolfie is very bad and dangerous. And he's trying to push him away from that.
Kind of like how a man with power is considered not a good thing.
Yeah, you mean like a male Chandler, you mean?
Yeah, sorry. A man who can wield the one power is considered kind of negative.
But my response to that would be, just kill him then. If you're concerned about him fulfilling his destiny.
That's too simple. Then we would lose the character.
It's the Scott Evil scene from Austin Powers. Close the doors. What are you doing? We could do it together. That's father and son, So I'm like, what is going on in this scene? Anyway, so that was my main thought about this whole story.
Okay.
Was what in tarnation is a Shamiel doing here? What in the third age is happening? Other than that, I loved everything. I'll say I loved everything about the Shanshan. I think they're depicting them the way they need to, in a brutal fashion, and their brutality takes many different forms. Not only from Uno's death, but also the fact that they are just rounding up women who can channel. And as book readers, we know what that means. We show only watchers, non-book readers will soon find out what that truly means. And so I think they're doing a really good job of depicting the Shanshan as a horrifying, brutal threat to this world and to the people in the world. Yep. So kudos on that. Last thing, I don't remember if I asked you this. Allegedly, the voice of Lady Sarath is the real life wife of Uno, the actor that plays Uno.
That's cool.
So they always have that scene
Except,
together.
she orders his death and basically watches her husband die in front of her. But other than that, details, it's fine.
Details.
That is pretty cool, though, just to be... I imagine on set it was a fun interaction, and to, act together and kind of be in that situation was probably pretty entertaining.
Well, we will see where the Nail storyline goes from here on out, but I'm excited to see. But let's segue to another storyline, which is, we'll go with Matt and Min.
Okay.
And this touches in part on the Nynaeve storyline. So before we get to Nynaeve, ultimately everyone in the tower thinks Nynaeve fails the test because the third arch deactivates and without Nynaeve coming back out of it. And so this is important for these next two storylines because Liandrin tells Matt that she alludes to the fact that Nynaeve didn't make it. She didn't actually tell him it was Nynaeve. She just mentioned that a child of the Tarvalon, didn't make it. And in part blames him because she was distracted because of him, having to deal with him and his issues, that she couldn't focus properly on training and watching out for this novice. And then she just allows him to leave, just leaves the door open and says, "You're fine. I can't look at you anymore. I'm tired of you." And then he has some response to her and says, he's kind of indignant that she kept him there all this time and now she's just letting him go without ever asking what she really wanted. And so then she just lays into him and guilt trips the hell out of him about how he abandoned his friends. And actually tells so she doesn't say Nynaeve is the one that failed or died, but she does tell him, your friend could use you, Egwene. She's in the tower. You should go see her, but you probably won't because you're a coward and you're going to slink into some dark hole and never come out again or whatever. And so we see that the Matt tear come down again, the cheek that we talked about in the first episode. He's very emotionally affected by Liandrin's barbs. But he still leaves. He wanders out. And he does see Egwene. He sees Egwene, who's very emotional and crying on a bench in a garden. And he, at first, kind of leans toward going out and speaking with her, but then decides, I can't do this. And goes back to the cell and does something I thought he should have done the first time, which is he unveils the Django hole in his cell that attaches his cell to Min's. And he gets Min to come over, and then Min realizes the door is open. They decide to leave together to where Matt doesn't care. He just wants to leave. They saddle horses, and before they go, Min says, "I have to go take care of something real fast," and she wanders off to be encountered by Liandrin, who tells her, "You're doing a good job so far. You know where to take Matt." Doesn't say where to take Matt. It's got to be Falm, or some way to get to Falm. I don't know why it would be anywhere else. But she doesn't say where Min's supposed to take him, but does tell Min if she does this, both of them, Liandrin and Min, will be out from under the thumb of Moraine. But we don't know what it is Moraine has over either of them. I assume for Liandrin, she's just manipulating her, so I don't think Moraine actually has anything over Liandrin, other than the man in the harbor, but that I don't think is what she's referring to. I think she's just manipulating Min. Yeah. And so that's where we leave. We live with Min and Matt going off on their own little buddy cop adventure across the Westlands, leaving Tarvalon. Again, I assume for Falm. Thoughts on this storyline?
Well, I loved the epic takedown that Leandrin had on Matt. I was like, go, honey, go off.
Well, you've loved Leandrin so far,
Oh my
right?
gosh, I love Leandrin. So it just continues to, like, up my love for her. Because it's just like, you go, girl, tear into him. You let out some steam and anger. And then I really love that part. But it also, this is the moment which made me kind of rethink the son moment in the previous episode of possibly being a ruse, because we find out Leandrin's setting up this whole thing with Min.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, I'm questioning everything now about what her motives. So I kind of liked it more from a Leandrin standpoint. Of course, you're getting, you know, what's to come for Matt and Min, we'll see. But it's a mystery that we will find out. But I don't think it really advanced much on that side, other than, like, it's clearly setting the stage for them to probably head to, like, Falme and where the Great Horn and all that jazz will end up happening, hopefully. So I thought it was more of, like, a Leandrin, like, oh yeah, moment, more than anything.
You sound like you're leaning very heavy Red Aja these days. You're like, yeah, you know, that
I
makes some
just
good
love
points.
her. I think she's great. I don't know if it's the actress, the writing for her, or what, or how they're setting it up. That character's just fantastic at the moment. Yeah.
So, I have a lot of thoughts about this storyline too.
Okay.
Probably unsurprisingly. I'm still wondering, is this Leandrin's personal dungeon? Does she have a personal dungeon somewhere? Or is this a dungeon that any Aes Sedai can access? Because she's the only one that goes down there, apparently. And there are no
It's clearly at the
guards.
tower, though. It's clearly at the tower, because,
Yeah.
you know, he sees Egwene, so...
I like what they've done with Matt, and I like the fact that he was compelled to go talk and try and comfort Egwene, but still felt very guilty. And he was running from the hard thing to do. You know, he took the path of least resistance, which was just go back, get Min. Thought it was weird that he didn't let Min out first.
That is weird.
I was
He's just like, okay, bye.
what are you doing? You've been drinking with this person that you just encountered, this cellmate, the only other person you've been able to talk to, and you have the way out, and you just don't tell her? That was weird. Obviously, it felt very contrived that they didn't want to have the conversation between Matt and Min until after Matt almost encountered Egwene. And so that kind of annoyed me. That's a nitpick. I admit that's a nitpick, but it did kind of annoy me. Leandrin was great. I love what they're doing with Leandrin generally. They're just making her a focal point of the White Tower storylines, which I think only enhances what happens, the payoff of her character in the latter half of the season. So I'm loving everything they're doing with Leandrin. I personally I don't think the guy was a ruse. I think that's really her son that Nynaeve stumbled upon. And we'll see, but I would lean towards that part's real. Everything else is a ruse. Everything else is a manipulation. What I have a question about, though, if I think too hard about Leandrin's plan here, it feels like it starts to break down. So she's somehow utilizing Min to get to Matt. And it's been 6 months, I think he says, because he obviously didn't go to Faldara. So he was in the tower for a little longer. But it's been about 5 months for Min because she left Faldara. So has Min been in that cell this entire time? This must imply that Leandrin knew he was chiseling out a block of concrete to access the adjacent cell. And so how does she know about that? Because he hid it. I don't think you can use the one power to... Maybe you can. I don't remember from the books if you can use the one power to test what's the word I'm looking for? The integrity of a room or a building. Maybe you can, because they talk about how, like, oh, you can pull earth from the stone from the tower or something. So maybe you can, like, test out and detect issues with the rock. So that's the question. Does she know this? She must have. Otherwise, Min would just be languishing in that cell.
Right.
Waiting for something to happen.
Out.
And if he didn't chisel his way through, then what was the plan for Leandrin? I don't know. It just seems like there's a lot of steps to this plan that the likelihood of happening was quite low.
Yeah.
Except that they needed Matt to meet Min so that this could happen. So the believability of this whole plan is a little sketch. I don't think I buy a lot of it, but it is what it is. So, but that did kind of annoy me. Like, this is really contrived and convoluted. Not as much as Lex Luthor's plan in Batman and Superman. That, as you know, kind of takes the cake for a lot of convoluted villain plans. But this I thought was pretty close. And so we'll see. I assume they're going to Falm, and this has also felt like a way to get Min into the show. And it seems like this is taking the place of the Tom Marilyn Matt storyline from Dragon Reborn. And I have to admit, I'm a little sad that they replaced it with this, because I liked the dynamic between Matt and Tom in the book, and I really like this iteration of Tom. And I thought Matt and Tom in the first season had a really good dynamic, even though it was so brief. And so far, Matt and Min's dynamic's fine. I think those two play off each other really well. So I think it'll be interesting. But I'm still a little disappointed that it's not Tom, and that they couldn't find something else to do with Min. The other thing too is I wonder where this is going, because Min's friendships and relationships with Egwene, Nynaeve, and Elayne was forged in a lot of ways in the books by the growth that they had experienced in the Tower, in particularly book 2. And you don't have that now. I mean, the last time they saw Min, Egwene and Nynaeve saw Min, she was bailing on him. And she was somewhat surly, which was fair because they came in demanding answers from her in the bar in Faldar. So it's understandable. But I wonder what ramifications this change is going to have for that relationship, or that set of relationships down the road. We'll see. Not a concern of mine, but something I thought of going forward amidst my disappointment in not seeing Tom Marilyn. So, yeah, again, Donald Finn. I like Donald Finn. He's killing it.
Continues to be great.
Yeah. The Min's great. So, anything else on Matt's storyline that you want to talk about?
No.
All right. We're almost to Nynaeve in the accepted test. We have the brief interlude of Egwene and Elayne. And Egwene finds out Nynaeve did not pass her test and is now dead by walking in on Shiriam disposing of Nynaeve's possessions in her room. And it was kind of funny because my recollection was Egwene knocked on her door a couple times and said, Nynaeve, Nynaeve. No response from inside.
No.
Shiriam's in there listening to this, just apparently ignoring Egwene. Or she has really bad hearing. I don't know. But then Shiriam basically just tells her, oh yeah, Nynaeve's gone, child. And so something effective, I'm going to be blunt about this, not because I want to be cruel, but because I respect you. She's gone. Get over it. Move on with your life. You still have a future here. And obviously, it makes Egwene very upset. And Elayne kind of tries to comfort her, but Egwene tells Elayne off. And so Elayne leaves. And then for most of the episode, Egwene is distraught, very upset about Nynaeve. She confronts Liandrin. Liandrin burns the accepted ring. I assume she was burning the accepted ring at that little forged thing in the White Tower that we saw in season 1. And then in confronting Liandrin, Egwene actually casts like a pillar of fire to block the door so that Liandrin can't leave. Because Liandrin's trying to walk away from Egwene. She has no time for Egwene. She only had time for Nynaeve. And everyone in the tower only has time for Nynaeve. No one cares about Egwene for whatever reason. And so Egwene just finally snaps and loses it. And then another scene I assume you liked, because it's Liandrin in like boss mode. You know, she walks straight at Egwene and forces Egwene to back up, because Egwene is now quite terrified of Liandrin's approach. And this is where we get the trailer line where it's not always the strongest who write history, it's those who survive. And basically says, that could be you, but you need to mind your place. And this goes back to my pseudo-annoyance I had, is that certain novices tend not to have any kind of respect for Aes Sedai, regardless of the situation. I mean, Egwene cast fire to block Liandrin's exit from this room. And there were no repercussions other than the not so veiled threats Liandrin throws at Egwene before she leaves. And so anyway, their storyline ends. Egwene is now in the accepted chamber. Apparently anyone can just come and go in the accepted chamber. And Egwene is trying to trigger the arches by channeling into them. And Elayne finds her there and tells her that's not going to work. Apparently other people have tried to reactivate the arches, because Elayne says to the effect, this has been tried and it's always failed. And if you do anything drastic, they'll expel you, and you don't want that. And so they end up sleeping in the accepted chamber, and the two of them
uncomfortably too.
Yeah, but Elayne stays with her to be try to be a calming presence to her. And then, spoiler alert, the arches reactivate, and Nynaeve comes spilling out of the third one almost into the arms of Egwene. And Nynaeve is screaming. We'll get to that. Why she's screaming in horror and terror and sadness, and Egwene's there holding her as Nynaeve, very upset. So, thoughts on the Egwene and Elayne? Any thoughts on that? It's kind of a fairly kind of D plot, E plot in this particular episode. Wasn't really, in my opinion, much going on with them. But basically, the reaction Egwene had to her hearing Nynaeve failed, and it was, I thought, depicted well. I mean, it was
for what it was,
organic. It made sense. Madeline Madden, the actor playing Egwene, was wonderful. She did a great job. Leandrin, another
was
great
fantastic.
Elayne, my favorite new character.
It went through like all 5 stages of grief pretty fast in like one little chunk of sequence. So you get to see the anger, you get to see the sadness.
The anger.
You get to see the sadness. You get to see, acceptance at the end. But,
I think you're missing 2 stages. I couldn't tell you what they are.
I can't remember.
One's bargaining. I know one is bargaining.
I don't. Maybe that's like trying to activate the arches again. I don't know.
I think you're fitting. I think it makes sense. I'm sure I could see that being, kind of the framework that they were following in writing it.
Yeah.
Because you're right. I mean, you just go through a lot of those stages in different ways throughout the episode.
Yeah. So again, loved Leandrin, like you said. Of course, I love that part. That was great. And then, the end. I also liked that, Elayne showed up to Egwene, kind of talk some sense into her, which kind of showed again Elaine's maturity and kind of intelligence towards certain situations, but also her compassion too, which is a great addition to her character traits. So overall, I thought it was well done too. All
right, well, let's get into it then.
Oof.
The accepted test.
Here we go.
The A plot for the whole episode, and this was the entire quote unquote cold open. It's not really a cold open anymore. I mean, it was 15, 20 minutes long or something. So it was a long extended intro scene.
Yep.
And we saw part of it released beforehand, where the 3 Aes Sedai, Shiriam, Leandrin, and Leanne, telling her what to expect, and that once started, she has to finish or she's expelled. And we get another great Leandrin scene where she tells Egwene, if you're doing this for someone else, you're going to fail. You need to do this only for yourself. And she had that piercing gaze that Kate Fleetwood has as Leandrin. She's killing it as Leandrin. And so they activate. There's only 3 Aes Sedai, and I'm trying to remember in the book. I thought there were more Aes Sedai there for the test. Maybe I'm misremembering it, but in this rendition of it, there's just the 3 of them, and they activate the arches. 2 of the arches aren't complete. The tops of them have collapsed and fallen off, but they still work. And so she goes in, and this, I know, we talked about this before we recorded, that bugged us. Shiriam says, the way back will come but once. In the books, our recollection is that's followed by be steadfast.
Yes.
And they don't say be steadfast at any point in the accepted test.
It killed me.
It's a small thing, but because it's a small thing, there's no reason it's not there.
No reason. And that line is so iconic.
Yes. And every time she said it in the show, I was waiting for it. I filled it in myself.
Me too.
And be steadfast.
I whispered it quietly. I was like, be steadfast.
We were the only steadfast ones, including the refrain every time it came up.
Yes. But it was just such a bummer because every time you're like on the edge of your seat and you're like,
as book fans,
she's gonna say it. Well, yeah, as a book fan, of course.
As non-book readers, obviously they don't have any idea what we're talking about, and they don't care. But it's just one of those things. Like, there's no reason not to include it. It's something
words.
Small. Yeah,
like,
it's not going to take a time. And I'm sure Shiriam, the person playing Shiriam, can do it in a very solemn. Yeah, she can deliver very well. I mean, she delivered the line, "The way back comes but once," very well. So
exactly.
she could do it.
She did great.
Frustrating.
It's a small thing. One of my biggest gripes about this whole this whole part.
So the accepted begins with the past, and so there are deviations from the way this took place in the book because the test in the books relied on how the Eye of the World ended, and so because the Eye of the World's ending was different between the book and the show, they had to alter portions of this, and so the vision of Nynaeve's past was she sees her parents again, and they're living in some secluded area, but they're accosted by a group of bandits who are coming over the hill and shooting arrows at them. And somehow they're all able to dodge all these arrows. Like, these are the worst bandits. They're like stormtroopers. The stormtroopers of the Wheel of Time. They can't hit any of the three, her parents or herself. I don't think any of them get hit. I just remember like arrows flying all over them, all around them, but they weren't getting hit. And so they flee back to their cottage, and Nynaeve's mother, I believe it is, puts Nynaeve in the basement to protect her. And then you hear the door get broken down, and there's fighting, and you hear steel clanging against steel. And then you hear a body hit the floor, and it's her mother, and the mother's eye, like one eye, is peering down at Nynaeve through one of the slats in the floor. And that's when the arch appears, and you hear "The way back comes but once," but you don't hear "Be steadfast." And so Nynaeve has to make a decision. Obviously, she decides to abandon her parents. Although I think her parents are basically dead at that point. So it wasn't. This is going to be a common complaint I have with this test. It really didn't feel like she was abandoning anybody or anyone in this iteration. So she flees back through the arch. And I take it back. No, she did get hit by an arrow because she had a shoulder wound. She had the old cliche shoulder wound that we talked about in our podcast episode of Twisted Metal, where
that wasn't an arrow. That
was it a dagger? Oh, it was a dagger.
Remember the guy like tackled her and was like pressing it
into her,
that's
right.
And then her mother shot the guy with an arrow.
It was in a special part of your shoulder where you're wounded but not killed. It's not fatal. Yeah. Right there. And so she comes bursting out of the first arch, and then someone, I think it's Leanne, pours a giant bucket of water on her, a dire vase of water, and then heals her little wound. Yeah. And Nynaeve's understandably upset. And we do get the lines of like, your sins are forgiven, or they're your own, or I can't remember exactly how it is, but you get that. And then, okay, next up, it's the Arch of Christmas Present. And she goes into that one, and she's now back in the Two Rivers, and there's a plague. And we get Roose Bolton. He's back as Tam Althor. Ew. Yeah, and he's got all these disgusting boils all over his chest. And it turns out the mother of Matt Cawthon, I think Natty Cawthon, who was a drunk in the first season, in the first episode, and always upset with her husband, Matt's father. She's now the wisdom, because she's apparently the best they could find. Was one of the town drunks, because I think they were both drunks. Both parents were, and she's basically killing everybody. She can't heal the plague or do anything, so she's just euthanizing everybody very slowly with the Crimson Thorn root. And so the big thing here was, Tam wants Nynaeve to stay there before he dies and be by his bedside as he expires, and then the way back comes but once, and so she says, "Oh, sorry. I need to go." And of course we don't get Be Steadfast, and she flees back through. Even though Tam's like, Nynaeve, come back. So then the third one, she goes in. We get the bucket of water. We get the sins forgiven, blah, blah, blah. Third one, Christmas future. She sees herself in a void, dressed as a Red Aja, screaming, doesn't like this. Comes back out of the arch, holding Lan's thing. I forget. I think it's Hidori. Is that what it's called? The headband. The thin headband.
Yeah, the band that holds his hair up.
And she's got blood all over her outfit, and doesn't have any memory of what she did. And so they pour the bucket of water, and they welcome her as an accepted. Try to hand her the ring, and she says, "I don't want anything to do with you people. I'm out." Storms out of the chamber, packs all of her crap, bids Egwene goodbye. and then gets a horse from somewhere and starts riding off, presumably back to the Two Rivers. On the way, right outside Tarvalon, meets Lan, and they embrace, and Lan and she declare their love for each other and say they'll go wherever each other is going. And that's where we see the arch. And so now that's where we learn she's still in the test. But it kind of flickers. It doesn't really take form, in my opinion, and she doesn't really notice it. She kind of senses it, but she's too caught up in the throes of her love for Lan. And it turns out they live.
Don't you hear? Don't you hear it say though?
I think you do.
The way back comes but once.
But not.
I feel like that's an important note that you do.
No, you're right. You're right. Yeah. And so I mean, they are saying that was the one time, and she literally turned her back on it.
Yeah, she's like,
and decided to live in this dream world. And so ultimately, she spends years there because we next see her in the Two Rivers, presumably. Looks like she's in the Two Rivers, living with Lan. They're married, presumably. They have a child who's like 5 or 6 or 7 years old, a fairly old child.
Yeah.
Playing with Perrin. No Rand. No Egwene. There's a reference, I think, that Egwene's Amerlin's seat, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and she's off
fighting Trollocs.
Some kind of battle or something.
Yeah. Matt rides up in a different outfit. He's dressed as a nobleman of some kind. He looked great.
He did.
I was like, finally, he's out of the bathrobe. I know it's a dream, but whatever. I'll take it. And then they have dinner together, but then they're accosted by Trollocs. The Trollocs kill everybody except the daughter. And then Nynaeve has one of her giant blasts of the One Power. It looked like the healing blast from season 1, but instead of that, it just blasted Trollocs away. Oh. And after that, the door comes back. And I can't remember, did the way back comes but once in tone at that point? I don't remember if we heard it again.
So I don't think we heard it.
I don't recall.
I don't recall hearing it. I just remember it just appeared, and I think she saw it. But again, it could have. Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah. Ultimately, it's not really that important because what she does is she grabs her child, and runs through the doorway, and reappears still in the pose of holding a child, kind of like this, but without a child. It's just air. And I think she's all bloodied again, or she's got blood, I think, on her outfit, and she's rightly so emotionally wrecked, crying out, screaming out. And this is what wakes up Egwene and Elayne. Now, we talked about the Egwene and Elayne storyline. They've now linked back up, and the episode ends with Nynaeve in tears in Egwene's arms. Cut to black. Roll credits. Before I turn it over real quick to get your thoughts on this, I did want to mention, actually, there was a great Easter egg involving Matt and his eye for the book series, which you have not gotten to that yet. But I just want to point out that was a great Easter egg that they included in there. So it doesn't give anything away.
Don't tell me about it because I want to read about it.
I did really like they had several Easter eggs in this accepted test that I thought were great. So anyway, I'll turn it over to you. What are your thoughts on the accepted test and the way they portrayed it?
So should we just talk about in general our issues with the approach that they took with the tests? Because at first I was on board with it, with how they set it up with the first test and then even the second one. I thought they were doing a pretty good job of showing what it's like to go through the arches and kind of what each individual novice or person who goes through them has to kind of face in terms of their fears and kind of overcoming them and giving up to come out and be completely cleansed and new, accepted. So I thought at first they were doing a really great job. I was like, I'm on board with this. They're telling Nynaeve's story in what I thought was maybe a more compelling way than the books, actually.
Oh, interesting. Right.
Yeah, because in the books I thought it was kind of okay. It's still intriguing. I still liked it. But I thought Egwene's was more interesting in the book than Nynaeve's. But when they got to the third one is when I started to be like, oh, come on, man. What are you doing? Because the moment we went down this road of she didn't come out, I instantly was like, oh my god, are they messing up another storyline for some dramatic moment? Or something that wouldn't make sense, though, in this world? Because essentially, the idea is you go in, you overcome your fears. The way back only comes but once. I'm like, I'm sorry, but that's the rules. And that's how it goes. I don't care how powerful, Nynaeve potentially could be. And maybe that's kind of what they're hinting towards. But
it happens differently in the books, but she does channel. So it comes back twice in the books, and the third one too, if I remember correctly.
Does it?
My recollection, she has to hold it open. So she's able. So that was the other thing too. So where there's kind of that mirrors itself, where you're not supposed to be able to channel in the arches, and she can. But in this iteration of the show, it like just show. I guess you could say, well, her blast somehow triggered it. Okay. But my recollection from the books is she sees it again, but she like somehow holds it open, where she didn't do in this iteration.
Gotcha.
So this kind of similar, but also different at the same time as to how it happened in the books. But I mean, it goes back to this idea that like Nynaeve is somehow exceptional and unique.
Yeah.
In different ways, and they are hammering that hard in the show, both in this last season and this season. So.
Yeah. But
sorry, I derailed you. I didn't mean to derail you.
No, it's okay. I was passionate about this part because I just thought, even if it happened in the books, which it clearly did, that it came back twice, maybe, I still had an issue with just how, like, the time length that went by with the Aes Sedai's waiting outside, but then the arches died down, and so they left, and then, I don't think in the book they were still there when she came out, right?
I think so, yeah. And I believe because the Amerlin in the books, like, greets all the successful novices and welcomes them in, I believe. Okay. Yeah, so there was a bunch of, I believe there were a bunch of Aes Sedai there when she emerged.
Yeah.
And so they didn't realize, I don't think, in the book that she decided to stay. Like, for them, they were just waiting as if it was a normal accepted test.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think maybe that's what I struggled with, is just the time difference that they had in this one, and that the Aes Sedai thought, the arch powered down, so they're like, oh, she decided to stay in there, and so I just didn't really like how that was portrayed, just because I don't think it was done in a sense that made sense for that world. If that makes any sense whatsoever. Probably not. Not well phrased.
No, I think. Well, I completely agree with you. we talked about before we recorded. I mean, I'm in complete agreement with you that I was not ultimately a big fan of the accepted test, and the way that because it does. So we were talking just now about like her using the one power in the arches, and the door comes back and stuff like that. And although there are echoes of that in the book, it's done differently in the show. And so I think it's reasonable to ask, like, well, did the show do it as good, better, worse than in the books? And in all these different cases, I think it did it worse in the show than in the books. I did like the first one better than the book one. The book one is the one where like Agonor's chasing her in some weird world. And that's why they had to change, obviously, because Agonor's not in the show.
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
So initially, I was okay with changing it to her parents and her kind of reliving a day in her childhood. Yeah. What I didn't like about that one, though, ultimately, this is the common thread that I have a problem with, is she doesn't seem to really be abandoning anybody. Because in the books and in the show, they even reference like sins, like they're supposed to be doing things that many would probably see as sinful, bad, wrong, immoral, unethical, whatever.
Right.
And when she goes to the arches in the first one, her parents seemingly are dead already. That was kind of the implication I got. And so she was just escaping the carnage. The second one was okay. That one is very similar. I don't know if you remember from the books. That's very similar to what they did in the books, where she goes back, and there's new wisdom. But the new wisdom's like evil. Affirmatively evil, not just like incompetent. Like they had Natty Cothamy in this one. But this, again, it was one of those things where all she's doing is leaving the bedside of a dying man. Like his fate was already decided, and then the arch popped back up. It's not like she could have done anything if she had stayed. And so, again, the stakes I thought were lower in the show than in the book. And so she's not giving up a whole lot to go back through the arches. And then the third one really, I think, was problematic in this way. because she didn't even abandon anyone. They all got killed, and it wasn't her fault they died. There were just a bunch of Trollocs there that attacked them. And she didn't have to abandon her child. She picked her child up and ran with her child, thinking that there was a way to save her and her child. Mm-hmm. And so for me, each of these three endings betrayed the point of the Arches and the Accepted Test in the books, as well as the way they set it up in the show. And so I was very unimpressed. and again, it was more so to kind of, piggyback off what you said about the Arch coming a second time. It did feel somewhat random. It didn't feel like she did something to bring it back. It just like popped back up because like, oh, we still need you in the main show. Come back, please. As opposed to her doing something to have it rematerialize.
To kind of reactivate it.
Yeah. And I don't know if like they're saying, oh, maybe Egwene is so powerful that she somehow, like when she was channeling, reactivated it. I don't think that's what they were going for. I assume it was the blast that she used against the Trollocs, but it didn't seem well tethered to me, those two instances. And so I really didn't like the way that they did the Accept. I mean, it was shot well. Zoe Robbins, who plays Nynaeve, did a phenomenal job. All the actors, again, did a phenomenal job in the different tests. Mm-hmm. I just thought that they didn't align well with the setup of the test in the grand scheme of things. And then I think you brought up off when we weren't recording, wouldn't the Aes Sedai be really interested? Like, would their whole understanding of this thing be shaken? Like, have we not realized that we could actually save people that have gotten lost in this thing?
Yeah.
And are they going to show that? Like, the Aes Sedai reconsidering their entire history with the Stargirl? Or are they just going to completely glaze over all of this and move forward?
Yeah.
What do you think? What's going to happen?
I mean, in reality, I don't. In reality, this would really actually happen. But if someone went through and essentially lived like a whole life of 5 years, especially marrying the man she loves and having a kid with him, and then having that traumatic death and everything that happened, and then having to then go through the Arch, and presumably she knows what will happen when she goes through there, losing her child. That has to have some kind of mental F-ness to you.
Yeah.
That will take a long time, in my opinion, lots of therapy, to recover from. If she could even recover from that, because that is an insane amount of just craziness to go through. Also, I would argue that because she went through all of that, she would hate the Aes Sedai even more and probably do what they insinuated at the beginning, which is just give up it all and leave the tower and just be like, I'm not dealing with this. You just put me through all that. And I could see, like, that's what I think true Nynaeve would probably end up doing. But I think they're going to probably gloss over it, give it some kind of, I don't know, reasoning or something that's easily buttons it up, and then she's on to the next thing. The thing about the Aes Sedai caring about what the Arches could potentially do after all that, I don't think they'll probably just be like, Nynaeve is so powerful, she must have just done something, and then that's it.
Lest we forget, she's the most powerful channeler they've seen in 1,000 years.
Right, like, just in case we didn't realize, this is another example of that.
Yeah.
So I don't think they'll go into investing.
That was the other thing I had a slight issue with too. With it was I didn't buy that she would just abandon the tower after coming out of the Arches with the
fast? No.
The headband. Yeah, I mean, because to me it was like abandoning her people. And so I thought that was more selfish than Nynaeve would necessarily be, choosing Lan and her own happiness over. Because she goes back and it's not even clear she's a wisdom anymore. And she's married, so she can't be wisdom, because presumably, I guess, wisdoms can't marry for whatever reason in that area of the world.
Yeah.
So she's given that up too.
Right.
And so that seemed a little out of character to me.
Well, that's just further proof that if she made that choice within the Arches to leave the tower, that after she goes through all this, she would leave the tower. It just reinforces that fact, you know?
Yeah, I don't know why. You're right. Why would she stay?
Especially based off of the initial part of that third test, where it's literally just like these really fast cuts of her essentially like Red Aja, insinuating that she ends up killing Lan, basically. And then, but she doesn't even have hard proof of that. It's just quick shots, glimpse, and noise, and then blood, If that's all that took to make her leave the tower in a test, having the love of her life husband murdered, and her friends, and losing her child, come on now. You can't tell me that she's just going to be like, I'm stronger for it. And the tower makes sense. I'm going to become an accepted Aes Sedai. I'm like, no.
I'm on board now. Now you got me. It took me 5 or 6 years, but I'm willing to matriculate back into the White Tower here.
Yeah, no, I have a hard time believing that. By the way, the Nynaeve, the actress, let me tell you, excellent acting. Though,
Oh, absolutely.
All of this. Yeah. She's fantastic. The emotion she showed when she came through the arch and she didn't have her child and she just broke down. It hit my heart as a mother because I was like, I can't even imagine going through something like that, which further reinforces that if I went through that, I'd be like, peace, guys. I'm not going to hang around you crazies. I'll take my chances out there.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, I think those are going to, from some of the commentary I've heard, that a lot of people actually did like the sequence for a variety of reasons.
I mean,
beyond the acting,
it
which is
at
top notch.
first. I liked it at first, but then the third one just threw me for a loop.
This might be a good segue because I wonder if this is going to come up. But to our final thoughts, we've been doing the one thing, the most significant criticism or concern that we have from the episode, if we have any, don't have to have any. Then our favorite part of the episode. And then our rating. So we'll start with concern/criticism. Is yours going to be the accepted test, or do you have something else?
I'll say my biggest criticism is them not saying be steadfast.
I love it. Yes.
That's my biggest criticism because it's so simple. They could have done it. As a fan, I would have been like, you know what? Even if they saved it for like the last one, I don't know.
Yeah.
Even if they said, you know, the meme of like the group in the bar and then they show something on the giant television and everyone's like, like going crazy. That would have been me in that moment. Because I just, it's so powerful. I love it.
You are steadfast in your criticism.
Criticism
of this.
is that one. But other than that, I would actually say because I thought the test started off decent, like at first with having like the 3 Aes Sedai there, they go through the motions, Nynaeve's going in and out. Even the first 2 tests were okay, like they were decent, and I didn't mind them. As part of her story. I like that part of it. So I'm actually going to say that my biggest criticism is just the Rand storyline because it just literally fell flat and died. And he went on a side quest and I was just like, there's really no point for it. It just felt like filler for a main character, which is never a good thing. So I think that's my biggest criticism.
To be different, because it was either Rand or was the accepted test. And since you covered the Rand, I'll go with the accepted test.
Okay.
Yeah.
We split it down the bit.
It annoyed, I'm just kind of annoyed by it. Probably too annoyed. Probably more annoyed than I probably should be, but whatever. So then what was your favorite thing from this episode?
Ooh,
we'll end on a positive
note. A positive note. My favorite thing. You go with your favorite thing first, because I'm noodling through and struggling a little bit.
I will go with the whole Shanshan sequence because I think that was one of the many things I thought they have to land well is the threat that the Shanshan posed. Sure. I think this was a good introduction, way better introduction to it than having a giant tidal wave take out a girl collecting oysters on a beach from the first season.
Very true.
So that I would have to say that was my favorite part because it really demonstrated the horror of the Shanshan. Only to probably be to escalate going ahead here. Undoubtedly to escalate because we, as book readers, have a sense of where this is going.
Okay, I agree. Seanchan is great, but I would say to make it different as well, I'm just gonna put in like every moment with Leandrin during this.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Episode
yeah,
because
sure.
I mean she had some great dialogue And she had some great one-liners, too. That became, like, key phrases in the trailers and stuff. And so I feel like she just shone.
That's a good one, yeah. I almost put Selene in there, too, because I think, again, as we were talking about earlier, they're capturing, in a different way from the books, Selene.
Yeah.
Laena's, that's a good one. So then what would you rate this out of 10? This particular episode?
It's not going to be very high. I would probably say like a 5.
Wow,
it was my least favorite of the 3, I think. Maybe because it was so focused on essentially what could have been like 3 big storylines. Could have been. And I think they failed on one, which is Rand's. I think they got like half of Nynaeve's one with the testing, a little like half correct, and then the Seanchan one was great, but then the Perrin part was like, which is technically Perrin was supposed to be like his storyline, and then Matt's just kind of like in there.
Yeah, that's there, and Min's there. I think I would give it. I'm going to give it a 6 at the moment, so a little bit higher than you. It's funny because I think all 3 of these episodes were better than every episode in the first season, with maybe the exception of episode 3 and 4, because those were my 2 favorite from the first season. It's actually funny because I've actually thought about maybe I need to go back and like re-rate the first season, having now seen what they actually can do, because I think generally speaking they've done a good job, especially on the production side of the season. So even though we're being critical, I don't know about you, I would still say this is a better season than the first season.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Well, there you go. We've now covered, reacted to, discussed the first 3 episodes, eagerly awaiting the debut of the 4th episode. Despite our reservations, we are still both, I think, hopefully I'm not speaking for you out of turn there, excited for the rest of the season and this next episode. Hopefully a Selene Rand episode, it sounds like. But before we get there, Denny, if listeners, if viewers would like to see some of our other content, Wheel of Time or otherwise, where might they find that content?
You can find it on our YouTube channel, where we create lovely videos, just like this one, including the first 2 episodes, a part of this review series that we're doing for the show.
These are also progressively getting longer.
They are progressively getting longer, and I anticipate them getting longer and longer as we go. I have a feeling. But on YouTube, check us out, videos. We also record podcasts, where you can basically find podcasts anywhere. You can find us at the Pop Docs. And then also on Twitter, at the Pop Docs. And then on Instagram, at the Pop Docs Pod.
There you go. So, consider liking, subscribing this video, joining the discourse in the comments below. Let us know what you thought of the episode, what you think of our opinions of the episode, and what you're looking forward to. Hopefully you're looking forward to the rest of the season. But with that, for this video, the Pop Docs Clinic is officially closed.